Okay, Lauren, I'm so excited to talk to you because I know we have been working together on and off for years, four
Yeah.
years. And you now have four offers on the table, but it wasn't always that way. And so I thought it'd be really great to just have you share your story around your job search and um, hopefully give some hope and inspiration to people who are feeling like you were once feeling not too long
Yep.
ago. So, can we just start off with your introduction?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Lauren. I am a head of marketing at a SaaS consumer goods company. And been working with Emily, as she said, on and off. So, part of the accelerator program that I went through, and excited to talk to you more, Emily, about our journey through that.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to dive in from the beginning and ask why you reached out again to work together in the this most recent job search you just went through.
Yeah, I think it was very different this time in terms of what I was looking for because I was consulting during this time, and the difference is I didn't want to stay. A lot of people love being in the consulting space. That's not me. I have always been a leader of people and running large teams, whether it be in marketing or anything having to do with marketing, corporate comms, and ops. So what I was looking for and what I found is I needed to position myself obviously higher. I'd always been a VP or higher, but I wanted something different. So attracting the right companies that resonated with my mission, vision, and values, and how to basically just sometimes you need a refresher on everything, right? And also working with you is huge because as a marketer, it's hard to brand yourself sometimes because you have that inner ego. So I would call on you and you would call on me and you'd be like, okay, well, have you thought about this? Or you just call me and be like, no, just do it. I think having that accountability worked really well between us because we were able to identify what we needed and what we didn't need in terms of the process.
Yeah. So I also know the last time you reached out, we
Yeah.
actually did a mock interview, and
Yeah.
I was like, wow, she's an excellent interviewer. Like, I really had not very many feedback for you. And I know the next interview you went on, you ended up crushing and you got the offer. So I want to ask, because obviously the market has changed a lot as well. And we are in a very client driven market where there's a lot of candidates seeking one opportunity. So I want
Mhm.
to just dive in a little bit more into how you felt this job search journey was different from previous job searches or job landscapes.
Yeah, if I would tell anybody, one, it's completely different than anything that I've ever seen. And you know, being anal since there have been so many layoffs in the overall market, especially with talent acquisition, employer brand, those people who really nurture and make that candidate experience great, they've gotten more pressure from hiring managers and so forth. And sometimes you're not always, even in these larger fields, because there's less bandwidth, you are working with more junior people who may be afraid of their job. So they may not be doing what I call advising hiring managers and saying, wait, this is too many interviews. You're compromising the experience. So I've seen a lot more order takers in terms of talent acquisition. Um, where I've had friends in talent acquisition who are just getting pushed, be like, put them through 9 interviews, put them through that. The other thing is the hiring process as a whole is much longer than it ever was.
Yeah.
So things that typically took 4 interviews, I mean, I had one that was 10 interviews, and that included um, one inter- 3 interviews with the hiring manager at an hour each, and then 5 with the entire one.
Oh,
Is completely different now, and you have to adjust those expectations. You have to think of it as an interview process. The other thing you have to do is if you're going for these higher, when you do the star method, I think the biggest takeaway that I've come away from the star method is they'll be like, tell me about a time there. And the number one thing where you can gain authority is like, well, switch it back on them and say, okay, can you give me an example of a current pain point now that you're dealing with. And I will tell you how I best solved that. That moved me through everything, because that changes it to a relationship rather than them just firing off these questions every single time and you feel like you're in rapid fire, right? So then it becomes more of a conversation, but that question and just reframing it like that, and also having answers ready for those questions, I
Mhm.
think really helped propel it much better than you did, because you're interviewing them as much as you are yourself, right? In terms of fit. And they need to know that you're not a number. So if you can convey that, I think you're in a much stronger position.
Oh, I love that. And that really speaks to your head of marketing, because I think that's something that you do extremely well, which is opening up the conversation, really listening and gathering information so that you can tailor your answers. It's always been something that I've been impressed by. So, yeah, it's no secret that you got to where you are. And I'm going to talk more about that. But I
Yeah.
also know, just being your coach, hearing like the trials and tribulations and obviously the downs that go with job searching. Can we
Yeah.
dive into a little bit more about that? Because it wasn't this like easy linear path for you.
No, and I don't think job searching or careers is a linear path. Like
Mhm.
I think I want to tell job searchers that if you're making a career transition or you want to go to a completely different field, you may still need to get in with a company in your current profession of where you're at, and then move within. Like that would be my advice. Find a great company that believes in you and a good company, and try and make that pivot internally, especially based in this market that you're given. The other thing is, it was what you have to do in this market is you have to understand that the way that you would normally act in terms of compassion and being like, you would, as myself, I know with every interviewing and having interviewed and hired over 150 people in my career, I would follow up with that interviewer. I would be like, but you can't, you have to have expectations that you cannot expect people to act the way that you would.
Mhm.
You have to let it roll off your back. Like
Mhm.
you just have to have more irons in the fire. But I think there was a lot. Like I was blessed where I was consulting at the time, so I was looking for the right role, right? So it wasn't that I wasn't working, but I got some ones where, you know, this, where I had an offer and I was excited about it, but it was a learning experience. So I'll tell you why. I had an offer, I accepted it, and then 1 week I'm supposed to start, they retracted the offer, and due to them missing their earnings investments. And then they called me back 3 months later, and I was at the tail interviews with all these other companies. So I was interviewing with 5 other companies at the time. And, but instead of 2 interviews, like the first process and giving me an offer, they wanted to throw me back into now a 6 person interview process with this for the same job, like for the
Mhm.
same exact thing. So it went from a 3 week interview process to now a 8 week interview process. And, you know, then I finally followed up exactly what we talked about, because I did have 3 other offers at the time. And they're like, oh, well, can you give us an extension? And can you tell these other offers no? And I'm like, no, I can't wait, you know, give you a week and tell other offers that I definitely have in hand. I can't do that. So you have to be firm with them as much as they are with you. And if there is a mutual, I think it's important that there is a mutual value exchange in who you're working with.
Yeah.
That when you're looking at companies, is your boss and the company willing to invest as much in you as you are in them? That is a huge thing. And the interview process is a very good indication of
Mhm.
what it's going to be like working there. So if they take 10 interviews to make a decision, probably means you may not get approval quickly if you're going to do a campaign, or is it something where they need approval from everybody else on their team and that's the way they run? So I think you really have to sense those clues and be like, am I being treated here? And if it's not, opt out. Like
Yeah.
opt out. It may be a job at the beginning for you, but it's not going to last long. So opt out at that point.
I can totally tell you're a marketer because you're using opt out of this.
I was like, time out, I'm out. But you're right. Like, it's like dating. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I have met more like people that I would never date in my entire life than, yeah. So I think I treat it that way.
I love what you just said there, Lauren, about in many ways it is almost a surrender. Like you just have to surrender. I can only control so much on my side of the street, and how they show up is a good indicator of how I'm going to be treated. And what you said there is it has to be mutually aligned. So it's not about every opportunity or every date I go on is going to be a perfect match. So let's fast forward, because thank you for painting that picture of
Sure.
jumping through hoops. Like this job search round has been really challenging. Like going on 6 rounds of interviews, 6 hours long of courting. Oh my goodness, like so much. But here you are on the other side. So you mentioned that you got 4 offers. Tell me a little bit more about what you felt moved the needle to drum up those opportunities.
Honestly, I think it was letting go of control and just being confident and moving the needle to where I was interviewing them as much as they were me. Because I had had opportunities. It was identifying and putting in the mind space of looking for the right opportunities. So I was blessed that I didn't have to find another role right away because I was already working, right? So I was very blessed with that. But I think it's like, no, like, are you adding as much value to me as I am to you? So really changing that overall mindset, not so much of, and really being like, okay, is this a place that I can thrive and be my best work? And I think it's when you come in terms of you being an advisor to that person and you're asking what those pain points are, right? Like you've read all the earnings releases, you've read all the product releases, you even congratulate them on a recent acquisition. But when you're able to ask them questions where you identify those pain points and then speak to those pain points like an advisor, then the interview process gets a lot easier because what they're doing is they're like, oh my gosh, they can be my right hand or they can be, whoever. And it doesn't go to more of interviewing. It's not interviewing at that point. At that point, it's a culture fit and whether or not they can see you working well within the team. So it's a completely different conversation at that point.
Yeah. And I'm hearing just an overall energetic shift from you too, where you don't have to go in feeling like, oh, I'll take anything, or like, can I help you? And really feed off of this desperate energy, or like letting this desperation come through. But instead, you really went in like, I'm here to find a strategic partner and be a strategic partner. So where's that partner in this?
And you could also tell, like, there were some that I turned down and they're like, what? You turned us down? And I'm like, yes, it's just not the right fit. And don't be afraid to do that. But here's the thing, what I've learned is even the ones didn't work out, I stayed close to. So I connected with them on LinkedIn. We're part of marketing groups together. We're part of strategic, like, whether it be product marketing, whether it be, demand gen, whatever, we're still friends. So I think it's important to keep in touch with those people, because how I interview was if it wasn't, and take meetings, by the way, that may not seem like meetings, take introductions just to see what comes out of it, because that's what I did. I interviewed in some places, even though that I knew that I would not take the role. And the reason being, or I was overqualified. And the reason was, I already knew that person and we had a great relationship. And 2, I was there to be a resource for them because I knew once I heard their requirements that I could automatically recommend somebody for the job for them, right? So it would win-win, where I would just be like, oh, this person, I'm going to have you guys connect. So I think the more that you can be a connector, not just to like network with yourself, but network and introduce other individuals for opportunities as well before you even get there, I think that's important.
Very good point, because it's not about the job. I always
No.
it's not about the job, but here you are building relationship capital. And when you are giving some resources or even another recommendation or referral, that plants a seed in their mind of like, wow, Lauren's such a giver, like Lauren's so helpful.
Yeah.
How can I help her in return? And so that's, I love what you just did there. And you never know where that opportunity is going to come from. So let me check in with you. Like, out of the 4 opportunities and the one that you ultimately took, what was the initial spark there? Like that opened up the door?
I think the spark is no matter what environment that I go to, I mean, I have like my top 4 list that I look for in any company that I've decided for to go for. And one, it's do I believe in the mission, vision, and values of the company? Do I feel like they have a good culture and they truly invest in their people, not from just a turnover standpoint when things go bad, but do they invest in their people?
Mhm.
Um, 2, do I have the ability to lead a team and be where I am in an executive leadership or senior leadership position where I can have my decisions make an impact, right? And then 3, also being having a great boss. A boss can make or break your career, whether or not you like it or not. You may be smarter than that boss in certain ways. You may not agree with that boss. They may have gotten there just out of, different angles where you may not agree with how they're doing things. But what I want to say is you have to find a boss that you can partner with that is going to be an advocate for you. That is very, so important. And then I think lastly was exactly what we talked about from an investment standpoint. Are they willing to invest in me as much as they need, that? Or are they just looking for another person? If they're just looking for a role to fill, then I'm not your person, right? But if you're looking to invest in me so there's growth throughout the side of the company, um, because obviously for me, my area was head of marketing and brand, and then also being able to handle the employee experience angle that you and I have talked about so much. So I think it was, do they have that? And the funny thing is you may not know that halfway until you get into the interview process. So even though these interviews are long, sometimes it takes through that for you to really get an honest answer to those questions.
Mm. What I'm hearing you say is that you went in with having a very clear understanding of your 4 non-negotiables. And at the forefront, you went into each conversation, allowing yourself to vet for these.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was more of just, simple things like tell me the process for launching a new product. How do you guys work together? So it's kind of like you interviewing them, tell me about what you think a recent success is and tell me what an opportunity is. How do people learn from failure? And I think that one question, learning from failure, is so important because do they allow you to get back up and try again and not have a fear for failure? And do they allow you to bring your authentic self to work? That to me is very important. And I think it's, something that you spend 80% of your time at work. Me, like I'm very much kind of that high achiever mentality. And that is important to me because work has so much of your life wrapped up into it. So I think it's important that you enjoy who you are and you can resonate with the team that you're working with.
So powerful. Um, okay, so how did you ultimately decide on the job that you did take?
100%. So it was really interesting. I thought about this with you because we've often talked about sometimes creating your own roles. So for me, I went into a marketing role and I was being replaced by somebody and I was like, I don't want that role. I did that role 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And I'm going to report to the executive team because before it reported to sales. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want it. And as you know, my background is working on the agency side and in corporate, reporting directly to the Fortune 500 CEOs. So I've always worked with the C-suite directly. So I basically went in and said, okay, I'm not this person. I'm at a different level. I want to build and manage a team. I want to report to the executive team. I want to do this, but in the end, yes, I definitely want to do marketing, but I also want to do these brand partnerships from the employee angle as well, because that is an important part in the with the launch of a platform. So I think it was customizing what I wanted, but being and saying, having, and all of these, I did the same thing. All of these jobs, they were advertised at one thing, and then I'm like, well, can we mold it as this? And being able to be like, oh, if we don't have that, or oh, we're looking for that, and being able to walk away. So it's kind of like, if they don't have that, or they want to pigeonhole you into this one role that you've already done, then you need to be able to walk away, unless they can give you a timeline to where, okay, we do this role, and if you, we'll put you in this other role. If you're okay with that, that's one thing. I was not okay with that. So I had to know that this was leading into, or was created into a different role. Still obviously handling and overseeing all of the marketing, which is such an amazing thing to be able to do. And I'm so thankful for it. But to be able to have this other passion of the employee experience standpoint too, right? Which was
I
really,
know it's very important to you.
yeah, it has been. And I think it's, I laugh, but I don't laugh. I've had two great bosses during my entire career, and I've had some interesting ones. And for me, I think it's so important, because I think you and I talked like what my mission was back in the day about creating, I've always enjoyed working with customers and real estate agents and, different large brands. But I've always said that the key to giving, 5-star customer experiences is by delivering unparalleled customer experiences. And because you can't have one without the other in terms of revenue and profitability. And I think that's a lost art. And I think people only really dealt with that situation when we were having turnover, and they realized how high the turnover costs were, right? And then they started paying attention to it. So I think it's such an important thing to address and have in all your programs, because it is so, apparent, and it is needed.
I just want to commend you, Lauren, because I talk about the happily hired framework, and it's kind of like these 7 C's. But from this conversation, I'm hearing so clearly that you have the confidence. Like, you're not afraid to say, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is what I'm able to deliver to you. And that comes with the clarity. Like, you were so clear on what it is that you wanted. You could build out your own job description, and you could articulate that to anyone that you were speaking with, and notice or observe whether or not they were in your orbit or not. So I just want to commend you on all of that. For those that are interested in joining the Happily Hired program, I would love to hear from you what you felt was the most helpful.
For me, absolutely. So the interesting thing about it, what I loved is, working with you, because you and I would work hand in hand with each other. The other thing was, when you look at the resources from even the solutions letter, I joke, but I don't joke. Every single one that I did the solutions letter to, whether or not I had a in-house referral or not, I got an interview. I'm not going to lie. But I'm very selective as to who I applied to, but I would get an interview. The ones that I didn't, I even tested this theory out. The ones that I didn't, where I just applied, but had a referral once, but I didn't do the letter, I'm just like, I'm going to test this out. I don't need the letter. And then I didn't get an interview, which is really funny.
I love that you're A/B testing, by the way.
A/B testing all this. But I think that's so important, because in this market, you have to stand out, and they are looking, I hate to say this, but you and I both know this is true, Emily, they're looking for the safe hire. They want the safe hire. And the other thing that I'm going to have to say that, when you're job searching and you're going through this kind of like metamorphosis of identifying who you are, really connect with people who are in a similar stage or support you, because not all your friends are going to understand what you're going through in terms of that. And that just may be, they may not want the same level role that you have. They may not, and that is okay.
Yeah.
But you be surrounded by that, because I have a great network of friends where I'm very blessed with, but I also had some that just didn't get it. And they're like, you have this great, amazing job. Like, why? Why?
Mhm.
So you have to surround yourself with a network of people that just make you better. I think
Mhm.
that's the most important thing, whether while going through this, but also afterwards, is that network, because that's going to keep you on the right path moving forward.
So beautiful. And yeah, I love what you said there because you're right. When you're in this echo chamber, like it's easy to stay. There's that really famous quote, like you're the culmination of the 5 people you surround yourself most with. And sometimes when we want to up level or we want to change, like we need to find that tribe of people who can champion us to do that
Yeah.
versus question, like, are you leaving us? Like, stay here. We want to keep you forever. But you're ready. You're ready for more.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question is, well, 2 more questions. One is if anyone were on the fence about Happily Hired program, what would you say to them?
I would say absolutely do it, because you're giving them the toolkit to make them stand out and to make them do it. And while you can sit here and you can put every resume or every letter into chat GPT, that's fine. But with you give them the tactics to actually execute.
Mm,
And having the background that you do, working with many people across all different industries, you're able to pinpoint what's going to work and what's, not going to work. I've seen too many resume people who have offered resume services, offered interview services, but they have no idea about your particular industry or whatsoever. So it's kind of like they're making recommendations that don't even make sense, or
mm,
they don't have the tactics to prove it. So I think that's very important when you're doing that, because it is a marathon, but you're giving them the success tools up front. And I think that's very helpful in order to be able to execute. The rest of them are just, theory and kind of like best practices. Like we all know that you have to have your LinkedIn profile updated. That's not hard. We know that you need to like post a certain amount of times. Like that's not hard. But I can't tell you how many people or friends that honestly that I have that sometimes went another way than I did, where they're just like, I'm going to do it myself. Or they hired a resume writer that was like, $7,000 or more, and they didn't get any more interviews out of it. They in fact got less than the resume that they had written themselves. So it's important that the person does not just write resumes, they actually have experience in the industries that you're going for. So when you write your resume, for example, you having the background that you did, you can easily say to me, because I was sometimes in my head being a marketer, because we accomplish and have so many stats, right?
yeah.
Like, hey, saw this, saw this, saw this. Did you forget that? Right. So you're able to give that advice, where other people, I felt like, who I had met with before, I felt like I was educating them the
Mm.
entire time. And I needed to have a peer who I could work hand in hand with, rather than paying them, but educating them at the same time.
You're actually not the first happily hired student who said that. Like, I had another client say, I ended up teaching my career coach on the phone. And she was like, oh, wow, really? Like, that's so interesting. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like you're the coach, but the roles are reversed.
Oh yeah, 100% I did. I'm like, I forget what they said, but I'm like, that's not the terminology, or just the way it came back. I'm like, my friends had shown me their resumes, and I literally put, their summary in chat GPT and got something better back in 5 minutes. So I think it's important that you invest this. And when you figure that it gives you the job that you want, it's such a small investment to
Mhm.
find the job that you want, the career that you want, in less time, rather
Mhm.
than to go with it on your own, or somebody who doesn't truly understand the industry or the role that you're going after.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really
Sure.
profound. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And my last question to you is, do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, I think with this, I think with job seekers right now, I think it is a totally different environment. I think it is one where you just need to be confident in your own abilities, be your biggest advocate, and even though it's a marathon, ask for what you want
Mhm.
and just be an advisor to these people that you're interviewing with. If you could be an advisor and really care and be solutions oriented with that servant minded leadership, I think everybody will go far. But I think it's just switching that mindset and being to lead with that servant minded leadership and authoritative, but yet inquisitive and helpful. And they'll love you at that point. But you just have to switch that and, just maintain that the right role will come along in the right time. I think that's very important.
Okay, I have one more question because I love what you just shared there. And I'm actually curious what the servant mindset ultimately got you tangibly, aside from 4 offers. Like, can you tell more about this current offer and how different or drastically changed your life is because of it?
Oh my God. Well, to kind of give you an idea, like in terms of ROI and the small price I paid, but like all the offers that I got, I was excited to be making at least 50,000 plus more than I was making before, which was fantastic. So
Yeah.
offers came in much higher with bonuses, with everything else. So and that's the minimum. So everything was going much higher. And the funny thing is that I do want to advise people though. Some of those things that you exactly talked about and you just posted this recently on LinkedIn is when you're what if you don't get the salary? What do you get all of this? And the funny thing is I didn't end up choosing the highest exact salary offer, believe it or not. I chose one that was competitive, obviously, but it wasn't the highest. And the reason being is I went back to the people and the mission. And what I would equate for is pick your top 4 things that you want from a company and a career. Rank those things by percentage and have them add up to 100%.
Mhm.
Then when you get that offer and you see what those 4 things are when you get the offer, you can compare them that way. So you compare them as does it have a good culture? If a culture is 30% to you, then you know how to rank it. If salary needs to be X or higher, you know how to rank it. So you're literally coming up with a finalized percentage based on all these offers of where you should go. Um, because I've done things where I've gotten the highest offer before and I went there and there was a reason why they paid so much money. They did not, there was a lot of pain and suffering that went with that. So I just want to be weary that you're looking at total rewards compensation. You're looking at is it going to make you the best version of yourself? I
Mhm.
think that's the most important people need to ask is that going to be the best version of yourself? Whether that means higher learning, of course, and being the best you can be at your craft, but also does that allow you to be a better, more attentive parent? Does that allow you to lead teams? Does that allow you to exactly what you said, have your passion outside of work? What does that look like? And does it equal to what you want? So I think too many people sometimes go after the highest paycheck. And while that obviously that is salary is obviously an important component, it should not be the only component to any role.
I love that you just have such great clarity on your non-negotiables and what those non-monetary values are worth to you, because that's really how you have a valuable life, is you live a life that honors your values and you consider that when packaging all your options together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This was so insightful, and you are just amazing. Like, I can't just hearing you speak, like you have such an evolution of your job search and yourself through this process. I can really see, like, yes, you got to your dream job, And you have really had to step into that next level thinking and that next level version of yourself to be able to align yourself to it. So kudos to you. Thank you again so much for all your support and being able to share your story with everyone.